In today's video, let's talk about chipping. Not that kind of chipping, weathering. What I really want to talk about is chipping your models. I think chipping is a really great technique that we can use to really kind of bring character to even the basic paint jobs of any tabletop miniatures or even display miniatures for that matter. Achieving a good chip just shows real wear and tear on a miniature. I'm going to show you how I do it on just basic tabletop bases. Gone ahead and made a base from scratch for an Armiger Knight that I'm doing. I just used various bits to kind of scrap together a tiny little pile of rubble. I then put some AK Interactive Muddy Ground on the rest of the base. I don't want too much focus to be on the base, but I want the base to tell a story about this Armiger trudging through a former battlefield perhaps, or even a decimated city, if you will. Just a little accent off to the side of the base to show that this Armiger is trudging through a former battlefield, or current battlefield for that matter. The narrative is up to you. I'll be sticking with AK Interactive. I really enjoy their products, but any chipping medium will do. I'll use the AK chipping medium. I just want to stress that when you get into it, depending on how much detail you want in your chipping, is how many layers of that chipping medium you're going to put onto the underlayer. And then you'll cover it with whatever color you want to be the primary main color of the object. For instance, in this video, I want it to look weathered, rusty, and kind of grimy. And then I'm going to cover over top of the barrels and the hatch with a green, kind of camo green, and a beige or a bleach bone type color. Let's get into the video. Let's let you see how it works, and then I'll tell you a little bit more in depth after the video. Alright kids, let's get into this. I've built a base with a basic rubble pile that I'm going to be chipping here. I primed it black. There's no fancy magic to this. Let's start off with a little bit of mahogany. This is Pro Acryl by Monument. All the paints are going to be Pro Acryl today. No fancy trickery here either. I'm just going to give it a quick, even coating of this mahogany. It's going to lay a nice base tone for the rust underneath all the chipping we're going to do here. So give it a nice, even base coat. There it is. It's a nice, warm, rusty brown color. Great base tone. Then we're going to jump over to Burnt Sienna. This is one of the newest colors from Pro Acryl, and I love it. We're going to pick out, we're going to be selective, kind of modeling the color over the area that we're trying to show a chipping effect or a rusting effect, right? So you're going to make kind of like, I don't know, little Dalmatian dots, whatever. They're bigger though, and kind of polka dotting it with no rhyme or reason. There's no motivation to put more color in this area due to lighting, blah blah blah. We're just making a base here. It's nothing fancy, so make sure you kind of give it a couple of spots here and there and intensify it with a second or third layer if you feel like it needs to get more. Then we're going to jump over to Burnt Orange. This one's going to be a little bit tighter. We're going to make these spots and dots and speckles or whatever a little bit tighter than the last step with the Burnt Sienna. It's okay to overlap them over the Burnt Sienna, but also have a few spots that might be independent of themselves. Rust is not one uniform color. It's many, many different colors, so we're going to be comboing quite a few colors here. There you go. There's a shot of the process so far. Now, let's grab our hobo sink, as my boy Kenny would call it, and we're just going to dump the residual paint left over in the pot into the hobo sink here. We're not going to clean the cup out. We're going to leave what we can't physically just shake out. Okay? Now we're going to dump in some regular old orange. It's a bright orange. I'm going to add a little bit more flow improver to the cup to compensate for the new paint that I'm putting in there. But I'm going to allow that residual burnt orange from the last step to mix in with the regular old orange here, so that it's not so in your face hunter orange or like
construction cone orange, if you will. Get that all mixed up, and even tighter so now. We're going to get even tighter with the spots. They're smaller, they're very tight and very precise, as you can see here. Maybe, I don't know, the size of a pencil eraser at best. You can, again, overlap them, move your model around, and then use a couple of spots that are more independent. We're going to knock this back so that bright orange is not going to be as intense or in your face here. There it is. We've got a nice, even, kind of cool looking rusty color. Now this is transparent brown. This is extremely underrated paint in my opinion. I'm going to give the whole model a good coat, 2-3 coats back and forth over what we've already built. And you're going to see it's going to knock that orange back, but still give it that rusty vibrance we want. Now we're going to grab some yellow ochre. And this step's kind of weird, but any sponge will work. This is some weird sponge my toddler had in his room from like a nose aspirator, right? It's a very fibrous, non-natural sponge. It's got a lot of space between the fibers, but it's a firm sponge. So I'm going to grab it with some tweezers here. I'm going to dab it in that yellow ochre, but I'm going to dab it off on the wet palette. I'm not going to dab it off on paper towel because I do want some to be on there, not like dry brushing here. But we're going to be very, very light. You don't want to smush it on there and poof, you've got like this big blob of yellow, right? You kind of want that texture that those individual fibers of the sponge are going to leave. And we're going to be super selective with this. I'm not going all over the model. I'm just putting a couple of little dabs here and there all over the surfaces. This will just give us a little more texture once we do the chipping over it. It's very selective. I cannot stress that enough. You don't want it to go and look like somebody slathered mustard all over your rust, but it gives it a little extra dimension. Now, the magic. This is AK Heavy Chipping Fluid. You can brush this on with no problem, but I always prefer to use an airbrush. Now, I'm not going to put this through any of my good airbrushes. I've got like a Masters, I don't know what model is. It was like $20 on Amazon. I consider it my throwaway brush. So I throw it in my Masters brush. I crank up the PSI to about 30, and I start kind of selectively spraying it. You can do a complete coat over the area. That's fine. But I want areas on these barrels especially where I'm not going to get any chipping when I remove the next layer. So I'm kind of modeling it. I'm just spritzing spots, being very selective with it. And that'll help. You'll see it in the end product. And here I am just kind of using some air back and forth, air to dry it, spraying over it again. 2, 3, 4 layers is best depending on how chunky you want your chipping. On the barrels, I only did about 2 layers because I want it to be more like paint has been removed or rubbed off. On that little hatch, I want it to be chipped. Okay, so for the chipping, you're going to need a few tools. The water and a paper towel. My kid's little toothbrush and my old toothbrush. I like the children's toothbrush because the bristles are a little more firm than, say, an adult toothbrush. See how soft this one is compared to that? Plus, I got this little, like, pointy hook thing that helps get in the crevices and whatnot. Some wooden toothpicks or bamboo skewers, whatever works, just a soft, sharp point. Those are great. And then if you have something like an awl or a pin, something like this, it's great for doing little scratches and nicks. Now I based the mini in whatever base coats I wanted. Once the chipping medium was dry, let that set and you're good to go. Now I just dunked the brush into the water here. You can be as aggressive or as gentle as you want. I'm being kind of gentle because I'm more or less trying to emulate that the paint has been weathered off. In some areas it will be chipped, but I'm going to concentrate more the chipping on the beige, the kind of tan hatch just to the right of the barrels. And I'm wiping off the excess water because I don't want to gob the chipping medium with the water, which activates that chipping medium. I kind of want to gently remove the paint so it's more natural looking. I could soak this brush and just slap it on there and that paint will come off right now. But I'm taking my time and being a little more deliberate and selective, if you will. And then I'll grab a paper towel because the paint does kind of build up once you start removing it. And I'll just dab it off. Don't rub, just dab it off. Otherwise, you'll lose your effect completely here. Now I'm going to start in on this, like, I don't know what it is. These are just random bits I had. There's a hatch here and almost like a wrench type thing that I threw in there. There are these ridges on top of that panel that I really want to distress, that I really want to weather and get chipped. So I'm kind of going more aggressive with more water on the toothbrush there and more pressure, and you can see it kind of removing. And then I'm going to grab this awl and I'm going to kind of dig away, make some little scratches in this wrench. And the barrels are made of plaster, so I'm not really going to go too hard on these barrels, but the hatch I'm definitely going to scratch it up a little bit here and there, and you kind of get the point. Just use what tools you can. Make sure that you've moistened that under layer. You can let some water sit for a little while on the piece and then start working it with tools, but you have to be careful because it will peel off in kind of like bigger chunks and sheets. So just kind of test it out a little bit before you try it on a model that you're really going to care about. I'm kind of paying more attention to the details with the toothpick here, like the little pour spout on the barrel, and just making a couple more scratches and dings and whatnot. You can see the difference between the panel and that barrel. The barrel is more like it's weathered out versus the panel being chipped. So you can do many different techniques with this one product. And I'm just going to kind of go back at this little barrel there and pay attention to the edges, because the edges are going to have more wear than, say, the top surfaces, depending on what you're trying to tell with your story, your narrative on the piece. So you'll see that if you keep attacking it, it's going to be a little too much for certain stories, if you will. So this is what I've got left. You will weather this further. You can throw a wash over it. You can throw some streak and grime on it. But I essentially wanted to show you guys how I do my chipping and paint weathering. I think it looked really good. Here it is after one layer of, I believe I used Army Painter Dark Tone on it. Just gives it a little more depth without destroying the rust.
So that's it. That's the process. The thing I really want you guys to understand is that the more layers of chipping medium you put on your underlayment color, the bigger the effect is going to be. And the longer you leave water on that surface before you start agitating it with a brush or chipping it away with a toothpick or whatever you're going to be doing, it's going to really kind of drastically change that effect. I kind of went at it right away with the water on the brush. Some people dab a drop of water, walk away for an hour, come back and start chipping away. You're going to get bigger sheets, bigger chips in that manner. So the reason I started attacking it aggressively with just a wet brush is to kind of get more of a subtle faded look on those barrels. And then I used more of the pinpoint tools like the skewer or even the pin. That's going to give you your chipping kind of look to it. So don't be afraid to test this out before you go ahead and potentially destroy one of your models maybe that you've worked very hard on thus far. Just be aware of how the product works. I know the first time I tried it, it was a little bizarre. I didn't really care for the results, but over time, it's all good. You'll figure it out. I hope this video is kind of going to give you an idea of what to expect if you're new to this. Of course, I then went on to further weather the base, but that wasn't the point of the video. The thumbnail picture itself is the completed base. I've used dry pigments. I've used streak and grime. I've used multiple washes on the mud. So understand that the thumbnail is very much the finished overall project. But if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. I'll make sure to answer any comments that need more detail, more specifics added onto it. But I pretty much covered the basics here. You're going to have to try it yourself on something before you dive off the deep end. This technique isn't just limited to rust either. You can have it work wonders for even orcs. You can put a simple layer of metallic underneath your paint and then have it so that it's kind of emulating chipped paint off of a metallic surface on maybe a killer can or something, or craziness, whatever your heart's desire with this technique. It's really a fun product to work with, and there are various methods to achieve this look. You can use the old salt trick, you can use the old hairspray trick, but I really feel that the AK chipping medium, or any chipping medium for that matter, is more of a controlled and intentional product. Hairspray is not intended to be a chipping medium. It just so happens that it reacts. And there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what you got laying around, test it out, try it out. But if you want to get some AK chipping medium, you can check out stores like Michigan Toy Soldier, where I actually have a discount code. And you can end up getting up to 15% off if you log on to their website and use my code that I'll leave down in the description below. I really appreciate you guys coming by, checking out the channel. Please make sure to subscribe. I also release my videos a week early to all my patrons. I'll leave a link down below to the Patreon campaign that I'm running. And on that note, I'm going to go ahead and throw up a list here of all the patrons that I have to thank right now who are currently supporting me and investing in my dream to be a full-time content creator. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Really appreciate you being here. Take care. In today's video, let's talk about chipping.